Hey guys, welcome back to chapter 12 of arc 3 of Higurashi When They Cry. It's your boy Karagol Gaming, and you know how we do things around here, baby. Let's just get right into it. The body wasn't there. The police didn't arrest me because of that, but I didn't know whether to feel happy about it. Just like Satoko had said, I had failed to kill her uncle. The body wasn't there, so I was forced to conclude as much, no matter what strange natural disaster, coincidence, or miracle it might have implied. In order to free Satoko, I became a demon. And this abnormal world was my reward. Yes, metaphorically, I had fallen into the demon world. But if that price had been in exchange for the life of Satoko's uncle, then that would have been fine. Since Satoko's uncle was still alive, still shackling her to him, I needed to become a demon once again. One more time. No, as many times as it took. I would kill that man over and over again until Satoko was liberated. I had already awoken. I looked at the clock to see that it was early in the morning at just about 5. It was already light outside. Once I had hardened my resolve to become a demon again, I could feel my whole body teeming with the awakened power once more. Time wasn't an issue. No matter what, I would do it. I got myself up. The exhaustion from the past 2 days was completely swept away, and I didn't even feel sleepy anymore either. I slowly rose and made sure my body was moving like I wanted it to. I could feel blood flowing through each and every one of my fingers. As I got dressed, I let my mind wander, and I had a strange thought. These 2 days, while I've said it was for Satoko's sake, the only thing on my mind has been killing. I've said it was for Satoko, but while actually carrying out the act, I had completely forgotten about Satoko, albeit only temporarily. Maybe, initially, it was for Satoko's sake, but now I was just a demon, killing for the sake of killing. And as a result, I had sunk into a world fit for such a demon. Maybe it was the same for Satoshi. He resolved himself to kill his aunt to save Satoko, became a demon, then disappeared from the sunlit Hinamizawa, vanishing into the demon world. Which meant that, after it was all said and done, I had met the same fate as him. I had tried to avoid making the same mistakes, but it happened anyway. Which meant that maybe Satoshi was here. Satoshi had come to this world a year before me, so he would be here somewhere. Then, surprised, I stopped walking. There was the second set of footsteps I had grown so used to hearing.
お前、ひょっとして、サトシなのか?
The empty, lifeless air wouldn't give me an answer. But I felt a strange kind of relief that there was someone there, that Satoshi had stuck with me the whole time. Let's go, Satoshi. Once more. This time, we will set Satoko free for sure. I quietly slipped out of the house so my parents wouldn't notice. If they caught me now when I had been out way too late for 2 days now, they would give me a really angry talking to. I didn't have the time to allow for that to happen. Today, I would put an end to it. See? There you said I would. Spell it out like that. If the dead body disappeared, then I didn't have to bury it. That's fine. I could just burn it to ashes and then take them with me, so I could kill him again every time he resurrected. I would do it again. I would kill him again. And this time, I would set her free. Outside, the morning light was so beautiful as to stagger belief. I went to the storage room to find weapons with which I could kill him for sure. Blunt or not, it didn't matter to me. Right now, I didn't need to care whether someone saw or if the police came. This world had gone crazy after all. A world where I had shown up at the festival and had fun even though I wasn't there. Even if the police arrested me, I would probably end up going right back home as if nothing had happened. Both me and that other Keiichi Maibara, even without me, he would fill in. I could vanish from Hinamizawa without anyone noticing. So basically, I didn't care if I was mistakenly killed. Even if I died, Keiichi Maibara would remain. After all, this isn't the world I belong in. If I was going to be killed mistakenly for Satoko's sake, then that was just a part of my duty as her nini. As those desperate thoughts became serious, the morning air felt more refreshing to me, strangely enough.
これは怖いな。こいつにするか。
It was a hatchet meant for chopping thick firewood. Its hefty steel blade was sinister, almost as though it was a tool meant for killing people. I couldn't exactly take it out in public like that, so I wrapped it a little in some old newspaper and tossed it into the basket of my bike. See, bro.
連日、悪い用事に使ってばかりで悪いな。
We need to change riders for Arc 4, bro, is all I'm saying.
今日も頼むぜ。俺の足。
I apologized to my bike for some reason. For the past 3 days, I've only used it for dangerous things. I had been riding this bike ever since I lived in my own town. I could walk most places I wanted to go, so I hadn't used it all that much. My mom had bought it for me when I entered cram school, thinking it would be a convenient way to get to the station since it was far away. So I had always used it to get back and forth from cram school. I had only ever put textbooks and class materials in the front basket too. I had never tried to put a hatchet that I would be using to kill someone in here. When I came to Hinamizawa, life finally felt fun. I met the best friends ever and had some of the greatest times ever. Those times might have been shattered now, but it was my greatest wish that I could get them back, even if I had to risk my life to do it. That's how fun those times had been. I killed someone, and now I was at it again, needing to kill someone. Murder was a crime. I didn't believe that people should ever think murder was alright. But still, the times I had were enjoyable enough for me to commit such a crime. My friends were irreplaceable, and the time spent with them was a treasure. Hanging out, laughing, sometimes tricking each other, but always in a friendly way. I didn't fear committing any crime as long as it was for the sake of taking back those times that gave my heart so much pleasure. Yes, this was a value I had decided to uphold. It wasn't something I learned from a school teacher. It was a noble path that I chose for myself. I thought back to when I had first come to Hinamizawa. About how on the very first day Satoko had welcomed me via a blackboard eraser with a rock in it. That welcome really surprised the heck out of me. She would laugh, get angry, cry. She was never boring. She was obviously the most childlike among us, but she was actually lively, full of vim and vigor, and good at meddling in other people's business. That went for Mion, Rena, and Rika-chan too. Wasn't Satoko the one at the center of everyone's laughing and banter? Satoko would try to look cool. Then Mion would make fun of her endlessly. Then Satoko would cry, which would put Rena in a state of ecstasy. Rika-chan would be greatly delighted. And I happened to get mixed up in it. We would always fool around like that. It was lonely when someone wasn't around, but if I had to name one for whom it was the worst, it would have been Satoko. Her smile was everyone's smile. Ever since she stopped smiling, so did the rest of us. And for the rest of us, not smiling was the same as dying. It was just like when I was silently going to cram school every day just to maintain my unchanging test scores. So basically, we were nothing when she wasn't smiling. She was full of hot air, but she was our princess, cute and unhateable. In that case, I was her knight, searching for the dragon's castle in order to win her smile back.
ナイトなら武器は剣だろ。ツーハンデッドのかっこいいやつ。錆びた肉厚のナタで挑むナイトは、多分古今東西俺一人だな。
Then I saw an old woman in the ridge of field waving to me.
おやケイチ君かい。
You gotta go too, bitch.
朝のサイクリングかいね。
おはようございます。
I reflexively waved back in a refreshing way. Should I really have been feeling so happy, waving like that? Satoko's house would be right past this road, going beyond the rice paddies. Cicadas had woken up too, and the next thing I knew, I was the audience to their daily chorus. I gave myself a hit or two in the head and drove away my merry morning mood. I took a deep breath and tilted my head back, quelling my pointless excitement. The body wasn't there. Its absence either meant my killing him had been an illusion, or that I had killed him and he had risen from the dead. If I was at the festival, then maybe I should have considered it an illusion. Coach probably thought that way, which is why he treated me like a lunatic. But it being an illusion was just impossible. I killed him without a doubt. Without a doubt. If it had been an illusion, then that would make all of this Hinamizawa I was in right now an illusion as well. If that was the case, then here's how it would end up. I was actually in a vegetative state due to a traffic accident, and I was currently dreaming in a hospital bed, which would make sense due to your encounter with Takano-san. You were on your bike, and there was a car approaching, and in Arc 2, you were in a hospital bed due to the events from that game. So maybe it's tied together somehow? About how great it would be to spend time with friends in rice paddies like these. That was a terrifying thought though. If this wasn't an illusion, then the only possible answer was that he had resurrected. It would make him a literal monster. But if he was such a monster, then I was no less than a monster myself. I didn't hesitate to kill someone, and I could even wield curses. Takano-san had died probably because I had cursed her. Or maybe that was a little too much. If Coach and Oishi died too, like I had cursed them to yesterday, then I would believe it. I set my bicycle aside and went to take a look. His motorbike wasn't here. Of course it wasn't. I sent it down to hell that night, throwing it into the Onigafuchi swamp. Or maybe, just like how the corpses wasn't here, maybe the motorcycle didn't get thrown into the swamp either. The fact that his bike wasn't here might have been because he had gone to town and hadn't come back, not necessarily because I had thrown it into the swamp. If her uncle wasn't around, then that was convenient on its own. Then I would just show myself in and wait for him to return, sharpening my hatchet. If he was there. Forgotten sensations came back to my gut. A feeling of tension rose within me. The sensation was like poison, dulling my actions, but it could also be the trigger to allow me to awaken to my superhuman otherworldly self. I held the hatchet, still wrapped in newspaper. Its weight in my hands was profound, sinister, and reliable. I hadn't put on my watch, so I didn't know what time it was, but it was probably still a little before 7. Satoko would probably be awake, preparing breakfast and her lunch, but her uncle would probably still be lazing around in bed. A guy like him probably would have stayed up late drinking, and probably always slept until noon. I considered ringing the doorbell and having Satoko open the door for me, but if her uncle woke up at the sound, I would waste my chance of him still being asleep. If Satoko saw me sneaking inside without ringing the doorbell, she would be surprised. If I ran into her, what would I say? I've come to kill your uncle for you, so stay quiet? Nah, I couldn't do that. That would be like making Satoko responsible for his death. Be quiet and go wait outside. Maybe that would do it. How would Satoko react to that? She would probably try and get me to give up on killing him. I would have to lie somehow to get her to go outside. Satoko didn't need to know that a murder was going to occur in this house. I couldn't quite think of a good lie to tell her, but I couldn't do much just standing around like this. I made up my mind and grabbed the doorknob. Then slowly turned it and pulled. It wasn't locked. The gap between the door and the wall steadily grew larger. The chain wasn't even on. Bitch, open the door. The oppressive smell of life in Satoko's house hit me. At the entrance, there were a few pairs of shoes and sandals. I couldn't even tell whether he was here or not just by looking at them. I could hear a television on somewhere. Oh my god, it's a hoarder's house. The television was in the messy dining room. What do we have in here? What is that on the bottom left? At least they got a bowl of fruit, right? There was food scattered about the table, giving an impression decidedly different from a happy family's mealtime. Meals were for eating food while thanking the person for making it. Meaning whatever occurred in this dining room wasn't a meal. Bro, what the? Shut the fuck up. Nobody in sight. No sign of anyone either. But with the television on, he must have been close. Could he have anticipated my coming and be hiding, waiting for me? The tension I felt was so thick, so tight, that I thought it would choke me. The newspaper wrapping the hatchet's thick blade didn't hamper its power at all. I tightened my grip on it, then very carefully took a look around. Where had those peaceful feelings from before I arrived here gone? Even the sound of sweat bubbling on my brow got on my nerves. And then, I looked at the table and realized something. This wasn't breakfast. The grains of boiled rice were all hard and dried up. Then, was it last night's dinner? I left the dining room, keeping vigilant, went down the hallway, and found the stairs to the second floor. When that man was playing with his friends, he looked out of a second-story window. It was highly possible that the room was his own, and he slept there. I tiptoed up the edges of the stairs, quietly climbing, without making a sound. I couldn't hear any kind of snoring. I didn't hear anything up there. I went through a few rooms, slowly and quietly opening the paper doors, checking inside. But I still couldn't find anyone around. To search more efficiently, I got down on the floor and pressed my ear right up to it. I could hear the television in the dining room and a low hum, perhaps of boiling water. It was then that I started to harbor some feelings of suspicion. This house wasn't right. It seemed like people had been here since the TV was on, but it wasn't normal for nobody to be around this early in the morning. I silently descended the stairs and went back into the dining room. I looked at the food scattered about. Completely dried up rice, an overturned bowl of miso soup, the package for a side dish bought at the supermarket. I could tell Satoko had definitely been the one who made this. The food was far from Mion's perfection or Rena's gentleness, but it was sincere. It had spirit, right? Judging by how she cooked for me at my house, and from the type and amount of side dishes, I deduced the meal was from last night. The number stamped into the food package read 830620. June 20th, 1983. That was yesterday. And there was food for two, which meant that this was last night's dinner and Satoko's uncle would have been here then. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't even think about saying the word impossible again. Anyway, her uncle was here last night. That much was the truth. He had found fault with Satoko's food, thrown the bowl of miso soup and flung the rest everywhere. Hidden deep within my feelings of calm and composure was a lit flame of anger and a curse. Should I have ever shown this man any mercy? Bump. I heard the sound again, the one from before, like a water boiler. What was it coming from? The first floor? But where? The kitchen maybe? Don't fuck? The bathroom maybe? I could hear the noise coming from the other side of the frosted glass at the far end of the changing room. It had to have been the sound of the water boiler for the bath. Steam was enshrouding the glass door and the heat from it was leaking into the changing room where I was standing too. My misgivings deepened. People didn't normally take a bath this early in the morning. If one did, then it would mean that, in this house, time had been stopped ever since some moment last night. Whistle, whistle, whistle. Was it being reheated? The water boiler in the bathroom had been active this whole time. I checked in our clothing basket and saw Satoko's familiar uniform stuffed in it. The uniform had stains and dried rice stuck to it, certainly not something she could wear today. It was probably from the miso soup at the dinner table yesterday. I looked hard at the frosted glass, but I couldn't see anything through all the steam. And then, an electric surge ran through my mind, and a terrible premonition came over me. Could she? She couldn't have possibly been in there since last night. That would be impossible. But no. In Hinamizawa right now, nothing was impossible. I gulped audibly, then quietly pulled aside the glass door. Hot, steaming air burst out of the slight opening. The fan wasn't on in the changing room, so it went completely white with the steam. Just as the hot vapor poured into the changing room, the cooler air also flowed into the room with the bath. And I just heard, due to being hit by that air, a very weak moan. That was all I needed to know who it was.
Satoko!
No answer. Satoko was in the bathtub, surrounded by a thick layer of rising steam. The top half of her body was leaning over the edge of the tub and she was passed out. The water boiler kept on making a whistling noise as if angered. I could see the gas flame through a small window. It was roaring at full force, completely blue. Satoko's entire body was boiled red and flaccid, as though her bones had melted away. She was almost like a doll, as she lay there unconscious. I wasn't sure how many seconds passed as I stared in complete bafflement. I came back to my senses and promptly shut off the boiler. Then, I dragged Satoko's small body out of the bathtub. The water in it was as hot as the water in public baths. Was she in this boiling water for the entire night? She will die. She will die. Satoko's body was lighter than I had expected as I laid her on the floor and wrapped her in a towel. I went back to the bathroom and opened up the vent, creating a path for a cool breeze to come through. Upon the breeze hitting her, Satoko moaned again, so she's not dead.
大丈夫かサトコ俺だケイチだわかるか聞こえるか
Satoko recognized me and muttered a response, but I couldn't really tell what she was saying. Her eyes were muddy and unfocused. I could tell she wasn't completely conscious. Upon closer inspection, her limbs and waist were twitching slightly. This was way worse than normal overheating. This was dangerous. Didn't they call this heat stroke? Think, what would the teacher do if a girl passed out in the middle of summer during a marathon in gym class or something? I turned the water faucet on in the kitchen all the way on. And soaked a towel in it. I then took the cold towel and pressed it to Satoko's forehead. Satoko reacted harshly to the coldness and let out a muffled voice. For burns, right, you would soak the burn spot under running water. Then, could I run cold water in the shower and cool her off like that? No. If it was that sudden, it wouldn't be good for her heart, and she would go into shock. I think I read that once before. This was about as much nursing as I could possibly give her. Anything more than this would be too much for the likes of an amateur.
大丈夫かサトコもう大丈夫だからな必ず俺がニーニーが助けてやるからな
She had been there for that many seconds? What was Satoko reciting under her breath? I thought I brought my ear to her mouth to better make out the mysterious spell-like words she kept saying. And at that moment, I understood what they were for.
サトコお前数を数えてなんで
People tell little kids in the bath to count to 100 a lot, right? Why? Satoko was counting like that. But 5,039?
バカ野郎お前の家の風呂はいくつ数える決まりになってんだよ
Probably 10,000? I doubted my ears and doubted her common sense. 10,000?
ふざけんなバカ野郎1万なんて数えられるバカがどこにいるんだよ
No dumbass, because if they could, they wouldn't be dumbasses, I'm assuming.
数えられるわけねえだろその前にユダって死んじまうに決まってんだろどうしてこんなことに
Last night, her uncle flew into a rage at the dinner table she had made, saying it stunk and was inedible. Satoko didn't understand what on earth he meant. It wasn't much different than what she usually made for him. Maybe he hated the smell of the pickled vegetables she had bought in particular. Her uncle then decided the stink was originating from Satoko and shouted at her that she never, ever took baths. And then, he put Satoko in the boiling water and told her not to come out until she counted 2. I snapped and exploded. Raising the newspaper-wrapped hatchet, I stampeded through the house. I searched for anything, traces, signs, smells, vibrations, heartbeats. With a war cry, I raced up the stairs with such force that I could have stomped a hole through them. Then I found the futon in the room I thought to be her uncle's, and well aware he wasn't sleeping in it, I bashed it with the hatchet. Did he run into the closet? I bust the entire closet down, door and all. And if he's not there, maybe there's a secret door. Any switches or levers in the walls here? You think this is Escobar's house, bitch? I smashed into wall after wall with the hatchet, crushing them. Dust rose into the air and broken pieces gathered about the floor. Fuck was that? I smashed all the glass windows too, for good fucking measure. After I had destroyed everything beyond recognition in her uncle's room, my reason finally kicked in and suppressed my emotions. Anyway, her uncle wasn't in the house right now, and when he comes back around, he's gonna see the broken glass everywhere, from the outside, and he's gonna be prepared for you, you dumb fuck. I would have to leave killing him until later. Right now, I had to do something about Satoko. I went back to the changing room. Satoko was still lying limp on the floor. There was nothing more an amateur like me could do for her. I needed to take her to the clinic. Coach had treated me like a lunatic yesterday and tried to lock me up in a mental hospital. I never wanted to see his goddamn face again. But I still needed to go to the infirmary one more time. I needed to have a doctor look at Satoko. I thought about putting her in the dirty uniform lying in the laundry basket, but I had no experience dressing someone, so it would be pretty difficult. How about your dumbass calls the hospital from here? Shit, I don't have time to be wasting here. I eventually gave up on clothing her and decided to carry her in the bath towel. The clinic was close to Satoko's house. It would be way faster to carry her all the way than to call 119 to get an ambulance. I threw the biggest towel I could find over her and prompted her to stand.
立てるか俺が診療所までおぶって行ってやるから
ありがとうですわ
Her words sounded clearer than before. She was starting to come back. I cried tears of relief just knowing she had improved even a little bit. Satoko turned over so she was lying on her face and then put up a weak struggle to get up on a knee. I smoothly swept her up and put her on my back. The towel I put on her seemed like it was about to fall off. Oh.
すぐ着くからしばらくの間だけ我慢してろ
It didn't hurt one bit to carry Satoko. She was light, too light. The lightness actually made me uneasy. Outside, it had gotten hotter, as though eager to attack Satoko. Fucking cicadas. Why did it have to choose this morning to get so hot out? Why you blaming the cicadas for the fucking heat? I didn't have time to swear at them. The clinic was this way. Hoisting Satoko on my back, I broke into a trot. Easy now. All that friction's gonna hurt her more. The hilly road to the clinic, with which I had never had any difficulties before, was now torturous. Big beads of sweat formed on my brow, and at some point my breath had grown faint. The hatchet in my belt was heavy and made it hard to walk. I considered leaving it, but I couldn't let it go, at least not while Satoko's uncle was still breathing. Just drop it nearby a tree, pick it up later on your way back, idiot. The signboard for Irie Clinic came into sight, but I quickly noticed something was odd, so I stopped. The note. Several red revolving lights were flashing at the clinic. 3 police cars were parked in the parking lot with their lights on. There didn't need to be much else to inform me something had happened. I didn't want to see Coach, so I planned to leave Satoko in the clinic waiting room and give the receptionist a message. But with that police officer Oishi here, I couldn't go inside so carelessly.
なんですの？パトカーがいっぱいいますですわよ。
I gently put Satoko down in the shade of the thicket.
わからない。様子を見てくるから、しばらくここにいろ。
レディをバスタオル1枚でこんなとこに置いてくなんて。
それだけ悪態がつけりゃ大丈夫だ。
I'll be right back, I added, getting to my feet. Cautious of my surroundings, I hid myself behind a car and got closer to the officers grouped at the clinic's entrance. I overheard an officer wearing a necktie, probably their leader, and a white-robed doctor having a discussion about something. The doctor didn't seem to be Coach. It was one of those who Coach told to make the tea yesterday.
じゃあつまり最初に見つけたのは朝当番のあなただったと。それでどんな感じだったんです？
事務室の所長席のソファーに座って居眠りをしているように見えました。
で、机の上に水差しと空き瓶になった睡眠薬があったんで、あなたはすぐに睡眠薬で自殺したんだと考えたと。それで
高熱と瞳孔の拡大に重度の意識障害も見られました。睡眠薬中毒の典型的な重症例だと思いましたので。
警察も救急も呼ばずに？
ここは病院で私は医師ですよ。生命が危険な状態にあるなら。
ああ、まあいいからいいから。それで
呼吸が不正常だったので人工呼吸を施しました。合わせて呼吸刺激薬を投与。効果が出なかったので人工呼吸器の準備をし。
ああ、はい。それでつまりいろいろ頑張ったけど結局ダメだったと。そういうわけですよね。通報は死んでから直ちに？
はい。救うことができずとても残念です。
Just then, a radio in one of the police cars started to buzz, producing a broken mechanical voice.
こちら本部、こちら本部。小宮山さん、聞こえますか？どうぞ。
もしもし、小宮山です。ああ、お疲れ様です。睡眠薬での自殺みたいですね。遺書の類はなし。
Could they be talking about Coach? Suicide? What the heck were they talking about? Suicide? Someone had committed suicide at the clinic. But who? I wished Takara-san dead, and she died the next day. And yesterday, I wished Coach dead. Then, could he have...
普段から睡眠薬を常用していたとかは？
あまり知りません。
日頃、疲れたとか死にたいとか、そんなこと言ってました？
入江先生は普段からああいう性格でしたから。
So, rest in peace Oishi as well then.
とてもそんな風には。
So I was right. Irie-sensei. They were talking about Coach. Coach killed himself. Why would he do that? There couldn't have been any reason he wanted to die. The only reason that came to mind was that I wanted him dead. This world was insane. If I wanted someone dead, they would die. That was the kind of world this was. Then, what about Oishi? What happened to him? If people really died because I wanted them to die, then something should have happened to him too.
そちらに応援が向かいました。
Well, you know what? Drop everything. So, Coach treated you like a lunatic, right? He tried to trap you in yesterday. Now he's dead. The others might know about it, but what are they gonna do now? They can't restrain you because, I mean, they have bigger fish to fry. They have other headaches right now. Just take Satoko in and let her get treated as soon as possible, is what I'm trying to say.
課長からそちらは応援に任せて大石社の捜索に戻るとのことです。
了解しました。じゃあすいません。こっちに今応援が来てるそうですから、現場はこのままにしておいてください。おい、行くぞ。
The officers nodded and split up into patrol cars. The officers nodded and split up into the patrol cars. Did they just say searching for Oishi's car? Searching for his car? That meant he had gone missing? Takano-san, Coach, and Oishi. When I wished for it, the very next day, they disappeared. No matter how angry you were and when you said you wished someone was dead, it normally didn't happen. Everyone knew just wishing for it wouldn't make them dead, and that's why people could utter such curses so lightly. But the curses I uttered were being granted, so why didn't you utter the same curse for her uncle? At the time, I hadn't even been walking, and yet, tap. I heard a footstep. And it wasn't only one this time. Tap, tap, they came from behind. And they stood right behind me, reaching a hand for my shoulder.
一体何事なんですの？
サトコが脅かすなよ。
驚いたのはこっちでしてよ。いきなり大声を出さないでくださいまし。
It was Satoko. Her eyes were still unstable, unfocused, but she seemed to be able to at least walk on her own now. She looked far better now compared to her earlier exhausted state.
具合はどうなんだ？もう大丈夫なのか？
まだ頭が痛いですけど、いつまでもこんな格好で表にいられませんもの。
She gave a smile, a show of courage, but her legs were still shaky.
それより、これは一体何事なんですの？
Never mind that, let's get inside.
今、警察が話してるのを聞いてた限りじゃ。
Damn, you have super hearing too.
監督が自殺したらしい。
Satoko was at a loss for words. Her face grew paler and paler, and I could tell she was doubting her own ears.
ケイチさん、それ、本当ですの？何かの聞き間違いじゃないんですの？
I can't verify it.
確かにそう聞いたよ。入江先生が睡眠薬で自殺したって。
Satoko went down on her knees and broke out in tears.
嘘ですわ。監督が自殺なんて、そんなの絶対に。
As I watched Satoko crying and clawing at the grass, I felt myself trapped by guilt and remorse. I got so angry that Coach was treating me like a madman yesterday, that he had betrayed me, that I had thought he would be better off dead. But even Coach, who to me deserved to die, still must have had people who loved and respected him, like Satoko here. In my selfish, egotistical anger, I wished for his death and it was granted. And now Satoko was crying hysterically as a result. The guilt tore at my heart. I worked myself up to murder for Satoko's sake. I decided I wanted Satoko to be happy, but was that really all it took? Murder meant taking someone's life. It meant making everyone attached to that person sad. In Satoko's uncle's case, of course, nobody would be sad, so I didn't feel a sense of guilt at all. But Coach's death was different. I had wanted to make Satoko happy, and that had resulted in me inflicting a deep sadness upon her, hadn't it? But Coach killed himself. It wasn't my doing. Satoko still hadn't stopped crying, but she seemed to be a little calmer now. Wiping her tears, she stood up.
すまない。
And the only thing I could think of to say to her was an apology. There was no other right.
どうして謝りますの？
俺、昨日監督とお前なんか死んじまえって呪ったんだ。呪ったから本当に死んじゃって。
Satoko looked at me dubiously for a few moments. Eventually, her expression softened as she interpreted my own words in her own way.
ケイチさんのせいではありませんわ。監督も 大人ですもの。自分の命を捨てるに値する都合があって悩んだ末に選んだんですもの。誰のせいでもありませんわ。
She smiled a little, trying to comfort me.
いつまでもこのままでいたくありませんわ。服が欲しい。
いいのかよ。診療所に行って見てもらった方が。
服を着てから見てもらっても別に死にはしませんわ。
Satoko readjusted her bath towel and started back along the path. Her stride was wobbly, and it didn't look like she had recovered as much as she let on. At first, Satoko tried to go back home, but it was the time of the morning when people were going to school and to work, so after seeing people walking around, she thought better of it. She must have been pretty embarrassed wearing only the towel.
理科のうちに行きますわよ。
This is all kinds of fucking stupid. You should have gone into the hospital. Keiichi could have gone back to your house, picked up a fresh set of clothes, and brought them to you.
私の服あるはずですから。どうしたんですの、ケイイチさん。
Satoko noticed how I was hanging my head and spoke to me.
監督はああ見えても大人ですのよ。ケイイチさんと喧嘩したくらいで自殺するような人ではありませんわ。自分を責めるのをおやしなさいませ。
At first, I thought it was coincidence, but with 3 people now, I couldn't discard the possibility. There was no such thing as impossible in this world.
この数日おかしいんだ。
何がですの。
Satoko seemed to be having trouble breathing, but she still tried to listen to what I had to
お
say.
とといの綿流しのお祭り、お前は途中で帰ったから行かなかったんだよな。そして俺は祭りに行ってみんな。
らしいですわね。あの時は取り乱して申し訳ありませんでしたわね。
Satoko remembered how she blew up at me in the classroom yesterday and bowed to me a little.
実は俺祭りに行っていないって言ったら信じるか。
Satoko looked at me, confused. She couldn't help it, of course.
信じられるわけありませんわ。何を今さら。
信じられないだろ。信じられないのはだって俺は祭りに行っていないのに。俺こんなの信じられるわけないだろ。
それ本気ですの。
ああの綿流しの夜からおかしいんだ。いつの間にか
Oh shit!
変な足音がペタペタとついてくるようになって。
How did I do that? Is it page up? Yeah. So page up again just does that. Okay. How do I close it without, making the mouse part of the party? It doesn't fucking work! Oh no. The blood drained from Satoko's expression.
足音がペタペタ。
Wait, what did they say now? Footsteps, right. Okay. I haven't missed anything.
そうなんだ。
It's... You motherfucker.
最初は気のせいだと思ってたけどずっとついてくるんだ。多分今もついてきてる。里子の足音と混じってよく聞き分けられないけれど。
Satoko took a long and hard look at me. Maybe she was doubting my sanity. Coach did the same thing. I mean, why wouldn't he, after telling him this? The more I thought about it, the more I was unable to endure the feeling that my hatred for Coach had been meaningless.
綿流しの日、俺は祭りに行かず、ずっとだぞ。眠ったり、意識がなくなったりしたことはなかった。だから寝ぼけ気分でフラフラと、記憶になく祭りに出かけたなんてことはありえない。
それはおかしいですわね。ならどうやってお祭りで遊んだんですの。
だから俺は祭りには行ってないんだよ。
No. I can't let myself get emotional. If I get agitated now, that would be like proving that there is something wrong with my head.
あ、ごめん。みんなが信じてくれないんで、つい。
圭一さんがそう言うなら信じてあげますわ。それで
あの夜高野さんに会ったんだ。それで見下されたと思って俺は心の中で念じたんだ。 お前なんか死んじまえって。
高野さんってどことなくそういう雰囲気がございますものね。その気持ちわからなくもありませんでしたよ。
高野さんが死んだの昨日の話だ。どこかで焼け死んだらしい。
それ本当ですの？死んだんですの？
俺が死ねと願うと次の日には死んでるんだ。それから警察の大石ってやつも。
You don't notice?
知ってるか？ムカつく太った刑事みたいなやつ。
Satoko nodded a little.
さっき警察が話してるのを聞いたんだが、どうもあいつ実は昨日あいつにも死んじまえって念じてたんだ。
それ本当の話ですの？
嘘じゃない。俺だって信じたくないけど本当の話なんだ。高野さんも監督も大石も俺が死ねと念じたら本当に死んでしまったんだ。
For a little while, Satoko was at a loss. A long silence ensued.
それは怖い話ですわね。圭一さんにせめて嫌われないように気をつけませんと。
それだけじゃない。もっとおかしいこともあるんだ。
Here he goes.
それはお前のおじなんだ。
おじさまの話はやめてくださいましな。
昨日いたんだろ、お前の家に。
Respect her wishes.
あの人の話はやめてくださいます。嫌なんですの。
ありえないんだ。あいつがいるわけがないんだ。
やめてって言ってますのよ。
あの男が綿流しの夜以降、だって
あの男のことはもう嫌なんですの。
俺が殺したんだ、この手で。
Even the cicadas stopped crying. Her face was streaked with tears, and it stiffened even more as she looked at me in disbelief.
俺が綿流しの祭りの夜にお前のおじを殺したんだ。だからお前の家に帰ってくるなんてことはありえないんだ。
He went back. And last night, he found fault with the dinner you made him, yelled all sorts of things at you, and then basically boiled you in the bathtub. That couldn't possibly have happened.
だから俺はあの男を確かに殺したという証拠を確かめるために。だがそこには死体はなかった。こんなことがあり得ると思うか？確かに殺したのに死体がないんだ。そして何事もなかったかのように帰宅して、こんなことがあっていいはずないだろう。
Satoko's entire body stiffened. She was shrinking away, like there was someone in front of her about to hurt her.
お前も俺のこと頭が変になったって思ってるんだろうな。
A little is,
無理もないさ。俺だって信じられない。
圭一さんはきっと空前呪った人が死んでしまったんで混乱してるだけに違いありませんわ。監督の自殺にショックを受けて気が動転してるだけなんですのよ。今日はもう学校を休んでお家で休んだ方がよろしい。私はもう平気ですから、どうかご自分の体を大事になさいまし。
Satoko spoke like she understood me, but she also told me to go home. I could see the revulsion in her face and knew that she didn't want to be around me anymore.
サトコをちゃんと診療所まで見送ったら、サトコだってまだ足元がフラフラじゃないか。途中で倒れたら大変だぞ。
私はもう本当に大丈夫なんですのよ。男の人にいつまでもこんな姿を晒していたくないんですのよ。
She wobbled up the shrine steps looking like she was about to fall. I immediately ran up to her and helped her stay on her feet. But then Satoko promptly jumped away from me. That outright rejection hurt a lot. Once she got to the top of the stairs, her breathing was ragged and she wasn't even looking at me. At this point, I was being ignored. Well, it was more like she didn't want to have anything to do with me. It really was a feeling of rejection. And that hurt my heart more than any blade could have. This was the path I chose for her sake. To be treated like this at the end of it all was just so saddening. Don't be naive, Keiichi Maibara. You never wanted to be repaid in the first place. You didn't do it so Satoko would thank you. You did it so Satoko would be happy. And that was what led to this ending. Rika-chan's house was a disaster prevention storehouse used by the town council. If you went past it, a little further through the shrine's grounds, you would apparently reach the back of the assembly hall. Satoko was heading there, walking quickly, the gravel under her feet crunching as she went. Did she want to get there as soon as possible, or did she want to run away? I couldn't tell. And then, I heard the vigorous sound of wings flapping. I turned around and saw a crow. I hadn't seen many crows since coming to Hinamizawa. I saw them a lot in my old town though. On garbage day, they would flock to the trash collection points, pick through the bags with their beaks and drag out the contents and have a feast. As I was remembering that, I saw a few crows flocking around the shrine's donation box, and I thought how terrible it was for someone to leave a garbage bag in a place like that. The cicadas quieted. Breathing stopped. Thoughts ceased. Even time came to a halt. I ran over to where the crows were flocking. I ran there in order to drive a horrible idea out of my mind. I definitely hadn't wanted this. There was no way I would ever wish for this even by mistake. This was not. Rika-chan? When they noticed my vicious approach, the crows all flapped upwards, fleeing into the sky. When the crow's big black bodies flew away, they exposed the garbage bag. The fuck is going on here? What had I seen there? That scream had escaped my throat from before I understood what I was looking at. What was this? Satoko came over as well, realizing something had happened, and she looked over my shoulder and then she screamed as well. This wasn't... The garbage bag was crimson dyed in fresh blood. Enough of this stupid roundabout way of saying it. That's right, yeah. Yes! It was Rika-chan! Our friend Satoko's best friend. Always easygoing, clever as a cat, but so cute you couldn't hate her. Our friend Rika-chan. She was... Rika-chan was stark naked. She was face up, limbs sprawled. Her eyes were like glass, just staring up at the sky. And...
Rika!
Satoko broke down crying on the spot, and yet she still couldn't approach her friend's remains. The crows had gotten through the garbage bag and they dragged out an apple peel and spread it all over. No. Crows, they wouldn't do this. On the spot, I started vomiting. The sour taste became a bitter one as I threw up over and over again. Rika-chan, her stomach was cut wide open, vertically, completely open. Crows couldn't have done this. And from her open stomach, her organs, her bowels were dragged out like children's toys left all over the floor. That unbelievable sight induced oxygen deprivation in my brain. Color left my vision, a pounding headache, dizzy, and I wanted to vomit. It was like the nightmarish remains of a ceremonial killing. Someone, somewhere, had killed Rika-chan, brought her here, laid her here with her limbs sprawled out, and then cut her stomach and dragged out her intestines. Red and pink viscera were sticking out of her gut, and her intestines were scattered in every direction like it had been for fun. The entire ground was covered in an ocean of red and black. A few of the crows had hopped around inside that ocean. They walked through the sea of blood, leaving bloody footprints. And those footprints, there were several still left on Rika-chan's body. Those sinister prints made it seem even more like a bizarre ritual killing. I may have wished for Takano-san and Coach and Oishi to die, but I didn't remember ever wishing for Rika-chan's death.
そうさ、俺じゃない。俺じゃない。
Why does everything have to be about you, bitch?
俺じゃない。
I stumbled backwards, then stepped on a newspaper. A newspaper in a place like this. The newspaper was what was covering my hatchet. I had it wrapped up and on my belt in order to carry Satoko. And that newspaper had fallen off. Sheesh, man, don't scare me like that. I bent down to pick it up, and then Satoko looked at me with such disbelief as I had never seen and froze. She was looking straight at me, at the hatchet, on my belt.
落ち着け、サトコ。これは違うぞ。
Satoko, trembling madly, backed away.
俺じゃない。
I mean, is there blood on my motherfucking hatchet?
俺じゃないんだ。俺じゃ。
She didn't care at all that she was exposing herself through the towel. She just trembled, tried to step back from the demon in front of her.
サトコ、落ち着いてくれ。頼むから。サト。
Screaming weakly, Satoko began to run unsteadily. Run. Away, that is.
待ってくれ、サトコ。違うんだ。違うんだ。
The way she ran away, it was so weak, so slow. So if I wanted to go after her, I could have caught up. But if I tried to grab Satoko's shoulder or something right now, she might actually go crazy. So I had to follow her and try to clear this up.
高野さんを殺して、監督を殺して、大石さんも殺したんでございましょう。
How? Did I make that motherfucker eat all those sleeping pills?
おじさまを殺そうとして、リカまで。リカまで。
I killed your uncle, but you said he was still there.
違う。俺じゃない。俺は殺してなんかいない。
何を言ってるんですの。あなたさっき自分で言ったじゃありませんの。死ねって、死んでしまえって。それでみんな死んでしまったんでしょ。
俺はその死ねって思っただけで、別に。
自分で何をしたか記憶に残っていないんでございましょう。そんな人の話なんか信用できるわけありませんわ。人を殺した時の記憶が欠落してるだけなんじゃありませんの。いや、記憶がないふりをしてるだけなんじゃありません。第一、そのナタは何なんですのよ。説明してごらんなさいな。
これは。
ほらほらほら、圭一さんは殺人鬼じゃありませんの。どうしてですの。ちょっと意地悪だったけど楽しくて優しい、一度は本当のニーニーかもしれないとまで思ったのに、どうしてそんな風になってしまったんですの。
I might have been able to slowly answer each one of Satoko's questions at a time. But in this situation, explaining my innocence in such a short period of time was impossible. I mean, I didn't even know if I was really innocent anyway. At the very least, I killed Satoko's uncle. There was no body, but I killed him. Without a doubt. At that point, I was far from innocent. And I wished for Takano-san, Coach, and Oishi were dead. And that curse of mine was granted. When I wished for Takano-san to die, I didn't think of it as anything more than a normal thing you would say to someone you didn't like. But then she actually did die, and I realized that if I wanted people to die, they would. And hoping that it would happen again, I cursed Coach and Oishi to the same fate. So even ignoring Takano-san's death, Coach's and Oishi's were completely premeditated crimes. Was I a killer, just like Satoko said? Was I unable to distinguish between illusion and reality and turned into a demon without remembering it, becoming a killer who carried out Oyashiro-sama's curse? Nah, that couldn't be it. It was impossible. Ha, damn it. The very word impossible was impossible in Hinamizawa right now. How many freaking times have I said that word these past 3 days, huh? Satoko had started crying again and was walking unsteadily. At first it felt like she was still running, but now it was like she was walking away crying from someone bullying her.
どうしてこんなことになってしまったんですの？どうして
If there was an answer to that, then I wanted to know it too. Why? Why had it turned out like this?
ニーがいなくなってずっと寂しかったけど、圭一さんが転校してきてくれて、またみんな明るくなって、楽しくなって、毎日が光ってたのに。
Yeah, she was right. Those days were bright and beautiful. And yet, after that, Satoko and I shouted the exact same thing.
どうしてこんなことに。
The cicadas were sneering at the spectacle, our strange game of tag. Shut the fuck up. Eventually, I heard the murmuring of a stream. The forest parted and a suspension bridge appeared. Satoko was crossing dangerously, wobbling as though she might fall at any moment. And when I stepped onto the bridge, it swayed a lot, causing Satoko to stagger and fall on the spot.
大丈夫かサトコ
Jesus Christ.
近寄らないでこの人殺し
Satoko shouted, her hatred made very clear. It was sad. If words could cut, then this warmth flowing from my eyes would have been blood for sure.
どうしてこうなってしまったんですの？圭一さんのこと大好きだったのに。
Oh. I wanted to go up to her and give her a hand, but the distance between us was uncrossable. If I got any closer, Satoko would start shouting again and say things that would hurt me deeply again. And so, I couldn't approach any closer than this.
サトコ俺にもなんでこうなったかでもこれだけは言えるリカちゃんを殺したのは俺じゃそれだけは絶対に
いい加減なこと言わないでほしいですわ。自分の記憶にも自信が持てない人が何を言ったってどう信じればいいって言うんですの？
I tightened my hands into fists. Oh god. This was mortifying. I wasn't crazy. Hinamizawa was crazy ever since I wandered into it lost on that one night. This insane world where I was at the festival when I wasn't, and the uncle I killed was alive. Where death would come just by wishing for it? It was this world's fault. Mion and Rena started acting strange like they were possessed by something too, and Coach wouldn't believe anything I had to say. And even Satoko, who I should have protected, was yelling at me like this. Was the price of killing a man supposed to be this high? Was I really going to be forced to stay in such a bitter world? I did the right thing. At least, I wanted to. So then, why? I hated it. Every time I asked why, the day Satoko and I enjoyed in peace went so wrong.
サトコ信じてくれ俺は人殺しじゃない。
ではそのナタは何なんですの？
For your uncle.
納得のいく説明はできまして。
このナタが怖いのかじゃあ捨てるよそれなら安心だろ。
Satoko didn't nod, but she seemed to be in agreement with that proposition. I clumsily took the hatchet out of my belt, then dropped it over the side of the bridge into the stream below.
捨てたぞこれで話を聞いてくれるな。
武器を捨てたぐらいで気を許すと思いまして。圭一さんほどの方なら私を素手で絞め殺すなんて簡単でしょうに。
Like hell I would ever want to kill Satoko. You You idiot.
じゃあどうしたらいい？両手を頭の上で組んだらいいか？
そうですわね。両手を頭の上で組んで後ろを向いてくださいます。
Huh. It was a cunning plan, much like the one she used during club activities. Putting my hands on my head and turning away would mean I couldn't attack Satoko very easily. What are you even pondering about right now, you fucking idiot? I immediately acquiesced to her request, since it would make her feel better.
これでいいか？俺の話を聞いてくれ。
Satoko stood up, and then very carefully approached me from behind. And then, she actually came up right behind me. She was so close, and yet I was so sad that I wasn't allowed to turn around.
圭一さんが悪くないのはなんとなくうすうす分かっていましたわ。
え？
多分あなたは何か悪いものに乗り移られただけなんですの。さっきまでは圭一さんが殺人鬼なんだと思ってたけど、あなたの目を見ていたら。
I could hear that Satoko was still crying, but her voice was gentle just the same.
圭一さんが人殺しなんかするわけがない。圭一さんの体を何か悪いものが乗っ取って悪事に駆り立てただけ。
Was she speaking literally right now? Or was she trying to admonish me? I couldn't tell.
思えばひょっとするとあの人たちも圭一さんと同じものに乗り移られていたのかもしれない。
Who?
あの時は殺されるとしか思わなかったから、今ならわかる。あれは乗り移った何か悪いものの仕業だった。
It's like the main character is Satoko, actually.
サトコ？何の話だ？
It was less like she was talking to me, and more like she was talking to herself, like she was confessing at my back.
わかってるんですの。身に覚えがないわけじゃないんですのよ。
Satoko's voice started to become mixed with sobs. Her pained voice tore at my heart. But I didn't know what Satoko was talking about.
西宮殿の屋根に4時何年も前のことですわ。
Once, when Satoko was playing hide and seek at the shrine grounds, she climbed onto the roof of the storehouse for ritual implements, which everyone said not to go near, and hid. Then Satoko saw that she could get in through a window meant for ventilation. For Satoko, the word curse was plenty scary, but she was more curious about what was inside the unknown storehouse. She removed the grating on the window, which was already hanging off, slid her small body into it, and climbed down inside. It was too dark to see much, but after descending, she realized just how high up she had been, and thus the curse was born, right? Despite the darkness, she could see a few things around her thanks to the faint light coming in from the air window. And to her disappointment, it was just a regular old storehouse. She tried to leave, but the door was locked up tight from the outside, and it was not made to open from within. She would have to go back out through the ventilation window she had come in from. But the window was so high on the wall that there was no way she would be able to climb back up. Satoko desperately tried not to cry and racked her brain thinking of a way to get up there. There were a lot of birdcage looking things hanging by chains from the ceiling. She took the hanging chains and strung them along the wall. If she climbed up the bundle of chains, she might be able to manage to climb up to the ventilation window. There was nothing else she could do, so she had to try. And try she did. It was very dark and creepy, and she didn't want to stay there forever. The more she thought about that, the more she panicked. She climbed up the bundle of chains. Satoko could hear the clinks and clangs of everything creaking under her weight. And then, just as her weight reached the window, one of the metal fixtures she had used to stick the chains on the wall flew off, and the chains all began to pull loudly and furiously every which way. Spurred on by the sounds behind her, she managed to get back onto the roof from the window. Because of the weight of the flailing bundle of chains, the other fixtures broke. And then one of the big bird cages hanging from the ceiling fell to the floor with a huge noise. Under it was an image of Oyashiro-sama, his vessel, and the cage took off one of the arms, then trapped some other implements beneath it. It didn't take very long for her to grow scared of what she had done. The deafening noise could be heard from the rest of the shrine grounds, A few other children heard it and gathered around. And of course, Rika was one of them. Then Rika's father, the shrine priest, with an angry look, ran over. And then, as for what happened next, it was painful to remember. The only one who knew where Rika's parents kept the key to the ritual storehouse was Rika. So, he scolded her, saying that this had happened because Rika pulled a prank and hid me in there. He was very angry and menacing. Just looking at him was enough to frighten anyone. He exposed Rika's back, took a strangely shaped ritual cane or something, and struck her with it several times. Rika's words at the time, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." That pitiful voice, I still can't get it out of my head. I should have said it was me. I should have said so to save my best friend from that false accusation, without being afraid of Rika's father's terrible temper. Rika gritted her teeth and cried at the crime she didn't remember doing. Ever since then, the world had been strange.
わかってるんですの。これはお社様のたたりだって。あの時最後伝を怪我して親友を見捨てた私への天罰だって。
お社様のたたり。
父も母も濁流に消えた。意地悪だったおばも死んだけど、誰よりも私を可愛がってくれた。そして圭一さんが転校してきて、やっと楽しい毎日が戻ってきたと思ったのに、今度は圭一さんが取りつかれて、リカも殺されて。聞いたの私。お社様は本当にたたりをなすときは本人をすぐに殺さないんだって。親しい人から順に殺して、みんな殺してから最後に殺すんだって。だから圭一さんもたたりにやられて、きっと今度はレナさんやミオンさんがたたられてしまうんですわ。
I don't think they fuck with you like that.
そして殺したり殺されたり、もう
落ち着けよサトコ。たたりなんかない。誰もお前をいじめたりなんかしないって。
When I turned around, I was thrust away with amazing force. Given my hands were awkwardly placed on my head, I couldn't take the fall and lost my balance. And I had been pushed not onto the bridge, but to the side. Towards the stream. Nah, this can't be happening. As one last miracle, I was allowed to grab a cord hanging from the bridge. Far below me was the stream. We were pretty high up, and below were rocks of all sizes. If I fell, it clearly wouldn't be pretty. The entire bridge was tilting under my body weight. My frail little grip wouldn't last another minute before my fingers had to let go. I didn't understand myself, what I meant by shouting her name then. Was I asking her to save me? Or was I asking her why she did this? Finally, everything came back into focus and I saw Satoko. And I was surprised at what an odd expression she had. It was the first time I had seen it. It was an expression of righteous anger meant only for those who needed to die. Oh. Jesus Christ. Dude, that doesn't even look like her anymore. Well, why did I press P? Fucking hell. As she screamed, she jerked the bridge to and fro. She didn't have to do that. I was going to fall anyway.
私はお前なんかには負けないんですのよ。たたりなんかに負けてたまるもんですか。お前になんか絶対に負けない。みんなを奪ったお前に絶対に負けたりなんかしない。
サトコ、これだけは聞いてくれ。
I don't know what my face looked like at the time, but it seemed like it was enough to quell Satoko's agitation.
俺のしたことは確かに褒められるものじゃない。いや、いけないことだったかもしれない。だけど お前に幸せになってほしくって、それだけは信じてくれ。
こいつ最後の最後でケイチさんのふりを。
Satoko didn't seem to have any more desire to listen to what I had to say. And for that to happen at the very end like this was tragic.
お前に褒められたくてやったわけじゃなかった。お前に幸せになってさえもらえればよかった。俺たちはお前が笑っていないと。だから俺が消えたら、俺が死ぬことで新しい生活を迎えたなら、きっと笑ってくれ。それだけ約束してくれないか。
Man, shut the fuck up.
喋るな。ケイチさんの口調で喋るな。星を押してしまえ。
And those were the last words Satoko ever said to me. Those sad, tragic, and altogether unrewarding words. What on earth was I? My desire to make Satoko happy ended up like this. Where did I first go wrong? And what was the mistake I made? When did I make it? Was I the crazy one, or was it Hinamizawa? Even after all of this, I thought I wasn't crazy at all. It was this eerie world that was crazy, this world I had accidentally wandered into that one night. Because that fun world, where I never doubted all the crazy times we had as a club would go on forever. It couldn't possibly have transformed into such an abnormal world. That fun world wouldn't have ever ended with this, with Satoko pushing me to my death. In the end, I was going to be swallowed up by this crazy world. And disappear. No, I probably already disappeared. Yeah, probably. On the night of Watanogashi. I'm sure that in the world I really belonged to, I had vanished that night and everyone was worried. It was laughable that I had taken this long to figure out I wasn't around anymore. Oyashiro-sama's curse on the 5th year was Satoko's uncle dying and me disappearing. In the real world, Satoko had already been freed. Maybe my friends were all lamenting my disappearance and valiantly trying to get back on their feet. And even though they were down to 4 people, the club would reopen and they would have a good time without me. Waiting for the day that I would come back. I'm sorry, everyone. I couldn't come back home. But this is what I wished for. It was my wish for Satoko's smile and my duty as her nini. At this point, there will be nobody left to torture you. Because Satoshi and I, it took 2 years, but we succeeded. That annoying toothy smile of yours, we wanted to see it one more time. My pain wasn't gentle or merciful. It was a sharp pain, violent, powerful, and ruthless. What little compassion I had receded in the span of a moment. And now, I could die. I could say goodbye to this insane world. Farewell, crazed Hinamizawa. Thanks for giving me the psychic power to kill people whenever I wanted. If you will still allow it, I'll wish for one thing. The death of this very world, of this crazed Hinamizawa, so that nobody would ever have to find themselves lost here again. Oyashiro-sama. Hey. Nobody really knows what characters to use to write Oyashiro-sama. Knowing this is hard partly because depending on the time period, he has been called with various titles, with subtle changes to his name, and nobody knows the real one. The only thing all time periods agree on is that the 4 syllables O, Ya, Shi, and Ro are always used. There is a theory stating that the shrine, or Yashiro, dedicated to Oyashiro-sama itself became an object of worship, and that people began calling it O Yashiro-sama, or Lord Honorable Shrine, but this doesn't make a bit of sense. I don't know whether this is related, but people say that the Furuta family, the most respected bloodline in terms of worshipping Oyashiro-sama, actually inherited his blood. And in the legend, the Furuta family passes down. If for 8 generations in a row the firstborn is a girl, the 8th daughter will be the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. If we go by this legend, the characters used for Oyashiro-sama's name should be O for honorable, Ya for 8, and Shiro for generation. These character assignments are simply something I've thought up. There is no way to verify it. If this is true, then Oyashiro-sama would have been named as such under the assumption he would come again. The second coming of an object of worship can be seen in several religions, so this isn't unusual. But a few of these religions call the second coming of their object of worship a day of judgment, or something along those lines, and we must not forget they mean it to be the end of the world. Rika Furude, pampered and loved dearly by the elderly folk in the village. The rumors say that she is the 8th generation and Oyashiro-sama. I do not know the family tree of the Furudes, but at the very least I can confirm that for the past 2 generations, the first child has been a girl. Rika Furude watches over Hinamizawa. If the village were to lose her protection, what would happen? Would peace between man and demon be lost? Did he ever wish for Oyashiro-sama's death? No, he didn't, right? Because if he did, and in turn Rika-chan died, then this would make sense. Would it once again create a hellish landscape where man-eating demons run rampant? A gruesome feast of the demons who suddenly remembered how delicious the weak humans were, who could only cry, scream, and run for their lives. What would that look like? Just imagining it is enough to make my heart pound with excitement. Fucking weirdo. Alright, I will see you guys next episode because this episode has dragged on for far too long. I'll see you guys next episode, man. Basically. I'm out of here. Love y'all. Deuces.